Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Master Series, which is part of the Healthy People 2020 Summit. I'm so delighted today. I'm Wendy Silvers, and I'm the host, and I'm just so happy today that I am with Diane Miller. So I met Diane Miller in 2015 as we were traversing the journey in the state of California, which was kind of ground zero with regard to SB 277. And I was so grateful and impressed to meet this wonderful woman who is one of the most peaceful, mindful attorneys I've ever met. And so thoughtful in her approach and her attitudes around advocacy, and somebody who has been a longtime advocate and public policy maker and advisor to freedom lovers everywhere and naturopaths and doctors to really keep in our society and in our government the support of natural health advocacy and advocates and practitioners. So I'm going to give you just a little more detail and information about Diane. She is an attorney and legal and public policy director for National Health Freedom Coalition, NHFC, and its sister lobbying organization, National Health Freedom Action. She is the co-moderator of the U.S. Health Freedom Congress, and she's an educator, lobbyist, and advocate for collaboration. Diane works to implement, Diane works to implement the principles of health freedom in all areas of health. Her work involves state, national, and international health freedom advocacy, including promoting safe harbor exemption state laws for homeopaths, naturopaths, herbalists, and state laws for medical professionals to practice holistic and integrative care, protecting access to dietary supplements, homeopathy remedies, and truthful health claims about them, advocating for laws that mandate labeling of GMOs and other toxic substances, protecting consumer rights to avoid vaccines or other medical treatments that pose significant potential for harm, and the rights to choose non-toxic health options, protecting access to raw milk, organic food, and natural resources, taking care to protect Mother Earth and her natural resources, and, if that wasn't enough, supporting leaders who are working to impact the decisions of international forums in order to protect health freedoms around the world. She is also the author of The Principles of Health Freedom. And this is a quote from Diane. I believe that laws and customs must be carefully reviewed, revised, and even repealed if necessary, and new ones created to reflect the continual development, evolution, and spiritual maturation of a people. Diane Miller.
What can I say?
It's the work that you do and the consciousness that you hold is so potent, and how necessary to bring that level of consciousness into advocacy and into law, into public policy. I mean, you're singing my song, right? So I would just really love to hear from you in three words or less. Just kidding, just absolutely kidding. So what's your assessment of where we are in the world today, given COVID-19?
Yeah, I think 3 sentences pretty adequate. It's quite a time in history. And so thank you so much for having me here with you today, Wendy, and thank you for all your wonderful advocacy work throughout your state and throughout the nation. I so value the work that you do, and it's good to see you. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
And I'm so sorry about California 277 and California 276, and what can I say? We'll just keep
62
working. So,
So,
so today's today's it's interesting. As a public policy director for a National Health Freedom Coalition, we have put a green button on our website to post the links from people that we think, you know, are worth a read, because is so much information out there, and how do people, citizens, know what to read. And I'm reading constantly, I'm listening constantly, I'm trying to sort out what to post, what not to post. We have a little subcommittee that decides what to post on our website, what we think would be a good read. And we've done so much of that we really haven't made our own statement, which we're working on right now. But it has been for all of us in the freedom movement, I think for Californians, for everybody around the country, the little microcosms of leaders are reflecting what's happening, I think, in the globe. You know, who do you trust? Should you differ when supposedly there's danger? You know, there's just a lot of confusion. There was a lot of confusion. It was like Pearl Harbor happened. A lot of confusion. And I think as the dust settles, a lot of the issues are becoming clear. A lot of the research is being done. The players are being identified. And I think that there's a very broad range of what really is going on in the world. It's the world of finance, it's the world of trade, it's the world of pharmaceutical issues, it's the world of health freedom, freedoms for alternative healthcare systems, public policies, and in place are a very broad net of healthcare workers and institutions that are ready and willing to implement what governments tell them to implement, because they think they're doing a great job for the service of mankind and womankind. So it is a confusing time, because good intentioned people are wanting to do good intentioned work. And then if you confront that at all, question that, you're considered hysterical or dangerous or crazy, or lots of other words that go on to the health freedom. And we're actually kind of used to that, because we've been in this for so many years. But I think at this point in time, one of our goals as a national organization has always been to bring integrity to the health freedom movement, so people take it seriously, so the leaders have good skills in making their arguments reasonably and with good facts. And so we're very much wanting to keep that present, because the taking away of civil liberties, or even the mention of having, you know, mandatory anything that crosses the skin barrier, is a dire place for the human population to be in.
I know we've talked about this before, and it bears repeating. What methods can we employ that will effectively communicate to people that they must engage critical thinking and ask questions and not walk lockstep in compliance?
Well, I think that is the biggest question, even in our own group. So if you can do that in your own family, or in your own nonprofit board of directors, or in your own work team, I know that even on our board of directors, we've had some very heavy discussions about whether a person should wear a mask I mean, and then it goes all the way down the chain of, well, there really is no virus anyway, or there is a virus, or blah, blah, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, these, and one of the things I noticed in our conversations is that the depth of respect that we have for each other as persons is essential in getting to a conclusion in an area of conflict. So we came through some really big conversations in the last 4 weeks with great grace, with great conversations, with you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to assess. You have to be willing to change your mind with new information. It's like whitewater rafting. It is literally, you have to be astute in being an American. And many Americans don't think of that as their responsibility as being a citizen or a person living here. That I just encourage Americans that if they want to live in a country that has freedom, then they have to be willing to be very engaged in the health freedom conversation. And they have to be willing to not polarize, because polarization stops things in their track. It's like having a tug of war and nothing happens. So in order to get to a place of what should we do, we really have to decide within our own little circle, what do we do? And then from that circle, that'll make waves with other circles of what do we do? And I know that people have, you know, become advocates or active because their civil liberties are now being infringed upon. And rather than having them be militant, which we might end up in our country having a revolution, but rather than beginning on the militant level, it's best to, in my mind, say what you think and see who agrees with you, and see why they say what they're saying. Get as much on the table as possible.
Okay, so what I heard you say sounds a lot to me like nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg's style of working through conflict, where you listen, you reflect back what you've heard, you step away from judgment, you're open to a solution, and everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinion and is respected. So I know that we have attempted many different ways to reach the legislation. Some have been more vocal, some have practiced the way of the peaceful warrior, and still the appearance is that they are not listening to the citizens. So we're at a very pivotal time in history. I saw just about 6 weeks ago, there was again something about homeopathy. And before that, it was about naturopaths. And so I know that you advise many different organizations and that your organization is a leader in this. So is it letter writing campaigns? Is it marches? I mean, there's a statewide May Day protest in California on Friday. And I'm assuming some people will be arrested. I don't know what that is going to look like, because people are so pumped. It's like they're just pumping through with cortisol and fear, and they're just walking like this, like, wear a mask, you got to wear a mask, you got to wash your hands, wear gloves. So all of that in that super freedom, I would love to know, I love what you said about being respectful, but where do you disrupt the system? What do you do when there has to be a disruption?
Well, I'm a firm believer in civil disobedience. So that, my background is, I support that.
Mm-hmm.
I support groups that can't comply with something because of their moral values. And so laws are on the books, and what do you do when you can't get the ear, when it's urgent and you can't get the ear? I think the Vietnam War rallies were a very good example. We, millions of people protesting, and yet we lost all of our friends.
Mm.
And so I believe that it's important to do what your moral conscience tells you to within peaceful demonstrations. Um, I think peaceful demonstrations are extremely important. Um, I think each person, uh, decides whether they're going to comply on different levels. Like some people will not wear a mask, some people won't stay in their homes, some people will, you know, um, protest at rallies. But I think that taking action to say what your value system is in a peaceful way is extremely important. I mean, there are millions and millions of people who don't believe in the obstruction of civil liberties. But if they sit at home terrified, that will not protect their civil liberties. So sometimes I think there is a need when it is such a huge issue. And in this situation, with wars, we're losing people to go off to wars, and we're hurting other countries. But with this, it's an internal devastation of our social fabric in America. It's a devastation economically.
Yeah.
It's a devastation of our rights to take care of our health in the way that we think we should be taking care of our health.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think it's important to talk about what you think. Like if you hear something and you don't believe it, just say, I don't believe that. You'll have to convince me of this. Or if if you think something's a lie, you need to say, I think that's a lie. Because otherwise we're just gridlocked in fear.
Yes. So there's been this conversation about concerts and large gatherings being canceled until there is therapeutic intervention and or a vaccine. So I had this thought come to me that really it is subterfuge for preventing people to take peaceful civil action. It hasn't gotten to the point where they're saying we're going to arrest people, but you have mayors and governors, especially in California, making this proclamation. And yet people still need to exercise their rights as Americans, as American citizens living in a free country. Yes? We still need to do that. And we're also dealing with the potential, not only devastation economically, but I've been reading articles where farmers, and I don't know if they're being instructed by the farmers union or who's giving this dictate, but they are destroying their crops out of fear that they have the COVID virus. So we're talking about economic bankruptcy, food system bankruptcy, health system bankruptcy. What do you, What do you have to say about that? Like, that's it to me. It's this, as, yeah.
There is no easy answer. I'm not a magician. Your guess is as good as mine. But I do think that the more that the health freedom leaders around the country can uncover some of the agendas that are happening, the better. It's an opportunity to dig for the truth and put it out to Americans. If the population of the world is controlled by a few people that have different agendas, we won't survive. That's the real deal. And so, as we attempt to state the truth, to dig for the truth, to claim the truth, that's all we can do. And we've got to let higher powers of all kinds take it from there. Somebody was just telling me they thought it was interesting that in the beginning of our country, in the English, when the English were, British were coming to take over, that malaria, this mosquito outbreak, killed most of their troops, and so they surrendered. And then now it's like the malaria drug is something that's being brought forward. And I think the universe is an interesting place. It's not all what we see. And I think that the love in the families living through this time, the love between families and friends and communities, and the conversations will continue to happen, whether we're at war, whether we're not at war. They have to continue to happen, and to try to avoid the polarity in your close circles.
Yeah.
Because that's where community breaks down. So I always say, look at what's right around you and whether you can address barriers in that arena. When you're at the Capitol, and we've talked about this before, a person is at the legislature, they are senators and they are representatives because their career path, they worked hard to get to that position and they want to help. And whether they have an agenda of their own or not, or whether the money that comes to them is going to keep them in office or not keep them in office, and what party they've chosen, all those things they've already lived through before you even get in front of them. So when you get in front of them, the conversation has to be about, it has to be a personal one. It has to be a personal conversation about what they think about the world and what actually liberty is about, what was the experiment that the America tried to put forth in the world. We tried to create a society that would have a freedom for an individual to go about their life in the way that they want to. And do they think that that's still important, or have they gone to more of a sense of that governments and people in power know what's best for a larger population? So I think that conversation personally with them requires not just a 15-minute visit in their office about a particular issue. It requires us to really talk to our legislators like people and to grapple with, I tell you, the personal conversations are the most hardest ones. I mean, it's easy to kind of go on the web and say, hey, this person's wrong, or this person's wrong, or this person's, deceitful. But that close circle within you, if you can dig for the truth together in a conversation that's ongoing, that's the thing that's the only thing that I've seen helps someone come to a place, whether it's myself or another person to change their mind about something very important.
I agree with you about that. And that's one of the things I have always admired and appreciated about your suggestions, because I'm a connector, and when I go anywhere, I want to know who I am connecting with, who they are.
I think that there are some people that when you're in the conversation with a senator or a representative, you're also wanting to maintain your integrity. So you might, then when it comes to the issue of protesting and being non-compliant, you're seen in a negative light by them, and that wrecks your relationship that's personal, and it gets quite confusing.
Yes.
When your civil liberties are in jeopardy. And so to protest with integrity is really important. To protest with...
what does that mean? To protest with integrity?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I think of Gandhi and his protest with integrity. I think that you have to protest with a vision of what you're going to do, with your goal in mind. This is what you're going to do, without with just keeping your eye on the ball instead of on the eye on the malicious conversations of polarizations. I mean, it doesn't help to name call. It doesn't help to do bad things. Sometimes those are planted just to make the protest look bad. But I think that it really is important to protest with integrity, so that the people that you're in conversation with in power realize you're protesting for your civil rights. You're not protesting out of hatred. You're protesting out of love for humanity.
I have been in the company of, let's say, Holly Mitchell, outside of her office. And it is somewhat confusing, because I have seen that she genuinely does care for the well-being of children. She has from all of my experiences with her, she cares deeply about children. However, when the conversation about parental choice enters the picture, we go from parental choice and freedom to public health. And there's seemingly no openness for, even in that, to me, that is just some formation of something that allows people, politicians and legislators, to have a particular protocol, but there's not an openness to see that even within that edifice, there needs to be freedom of choice.
Right. There are experiences I've had over the years where, constituents have reached the compassionate heart of a legislator, in that they have changed their minds. I remember one time especially, we met with constituents and a senator that was the head of a health committee way up in the North Woods of Minnesota, in a small backroom restaurant. But all of the people had stories, and those stories in a private setting brought all of us to tears. And that legislator changed her mind and decided to have a hearing. I think that the stories of the people are still people. Unless they're aliens or something, I don't know. But I think people are still people, and they have to be related to as people with hearts. And I do think, and like Clinton Miller I said, there is no bad legislator or senator. All people are good. That's just you have to have that as a premise for all lobbying efforts. Well, that's kind of hard to have when somebody's hurting you or taking your liberties away, or forcing your children not to go to school or something, or quarantine you. I've had some real rough days here because I don't want to stay in my house, so I go out every day and I don't wear a mask. But I'm doing civil disobedience. I don't know. As a person in our organization, as I represent our organization, I will have to defer to what we come up with a statement as an organization. Right now, I can only talk as a person, and I think that's important that all of us decide personally what we think from what we want to do. Right now, somebody was giving me a picture of people wearing masks in 1918, and I thought, well, that's interesting because 100 years of medical technology, and we have the internet, and we have all this stuff. You can't compare 1918 with today. It's just not real. And we are all connected with each other. There's some not truthful things on the internet, which is hard to decipher. So it's almost like we have the same problem, but it's in a different technological format of who to trust. So I think we all have a responsibility to figure out who we trust, what we think we should do before we even go out and, make statements about what all of us should be doing right now.
Yes. So I just read before we got on our dialogue, I just read that the FDA approved a drug, fast-tracked a drug to be used. So if you quarantine people and then you sequester them in the hospital or in nursing homes, and how do you maintain your civil liberties? What do you do? In California, there was a bill, adjunct to what I'm asking you. There was a law passed, 262, which essentially gives health officers or representatives, human health service representatives, the freedom to enter your home if there is suspicion of the contagion, and remove pets or family members, and elicit a protocol for undetermined amount. What does one do? What's the length of their civil, like their freedom? What do we have? What rights do we have?
Well, it's all in California law if you're talking about California.
Yes, and beyond, yeah.
After 9/11, many, many states passed laws for emergency protection. And originally, the governor powers had to do with national disasters and military actions and military unrest. And so on the state level, many governor powers statutes were changed and health emergency was added because people were afraid of biowarfare and pandemics. And so the legislators decided to add to the constitutional governor powers the ability to take charge of the state in a health emergency, which was new in our country. That never used to be true. And so, other than declaring martial law by the federal government. So many states have laws now like that have given their governors great powers in health emergencies, and they have to declare a health emergency. And they have to have fact patterns that would allow them to, so I think that's going to be the challenge legally right now, is have these governors got enough fact pattern to shut down the economy and to shut down civil liberties of people right now. Generally, we have quarantined sick people. We have not quarantined healthy people. Quarantine is for sick people. And the shelter in place that term has become normalized in the last 3 months. I mean, that term never even existed before. And now it's like Americans are going, oh yeah, I'm sheltering in place, isn't this cool? And it's like, what? but we used to stay at home. You know, if the flu was going around or something was going around that we didn't want to get, we used to stay at home. But the government wasn't telling us we had to stay at home. Other in Minnesota, it's $1,000 fine or a misdemeanor.
Right now, if somebody's it's
if they don't comply with the executive order. The executive order has a lot of exemptions. If you're going out for, you know, a walk, it's okay. If you're going out to get supplies, it's okay. If you're, you know, going to work and you're an essential worker, there's a whole list of exemptions. But if you're not under the exemption, there's this one, you know, it is crazy that a governor could think that they could arrest someone for not a healthy person.
Yes, I agree.
So I think that the normalization of the withdrawal of civil liberties by government is the most dangerous thing that's happening right now. And many Americans think it's wonderful because the wonderful government is keeping them safe. And so that's the source of course, of all the conflict. So I think the sharing of stories with people, digging for the truth is important, doing civil disobedience so that, you know, if everybody just says, well, I'm not going to protest and I'm just going to go with it, then nobody will know that this isn't okay. Because if nobody raises a flag, well, then, you know, nothing's wrong.
Right.
So I think it's commendable of people to get in their vehicles and do gridlocks of traffic if that's what they think is important. You know, they're not spreading disease by being in their vehicles. And, you know, if every vehicle came onto the California roads, I suppose they could shut down the state just with vehicles. But I think that I think doing the research and figuring out what you think is really going on, what's best for your community is the most important part before going into a mode of civil disobedience.
Okay.
And I just want to say that I have been mentoring a group in California for three, maybe 4 years already. Their organization is California Health Coalition Advocacy. And that group of women who have worked tirelessly against 276 and 277 and have a very broad health freedom mission have been hosting conversations on Tuesday evenings at 7 o'clock, just so that people can talk to each other about what's going on. And I think that if people can, you know, gather like that, you know, join local organizations, their website is California Health Coalition Advocacy.org, you know, or your organization, Wendy, or our organization, nationalhealthfreedom.org. I think that the more people join in the conversation of health freedom, the stronger our country will be. If we lay down and don't question the takeover of our financial, our educational, and our health society, we're nuts. We're just, we have to question that drastic of a move in our country. And we have to really work to get to the truth of what is going on so that we can survive. I mean, our country, I know, has an international reputation of its own, and we need to protect the independence of our vision for a country that has wealth, prosperity, equal justice for all. We have some wonderful visions as a society in our country. And I would hope that corporations don't become the monarch of the past. The corporations don't become the ones, the entities that destroy the fabric of our lives. So we have to just really dig for the truth to make corporations accountable for what they're doing, what they're asking of us as people.
Thank you, Diane.
sorry I don't have any perfect solution, but being in the freedom conversation, you know, it's like freedom isn't something, I always say, that you have. It's not something that you have. It's something you live. It's a conversation. Freedom is a conversation. It's an energetic, it's like green grass growing. It has to be in a conversation with the light. And I think that if we are in that conversation, we will be okay.
Thank you. Very, very wise, very sage guidance at a time where there's a lot of unrest and uncertainty and fear. So I really, again, appreciate you, and I'll make sure that everybody has links to your organization and CHCA, which I was actually part of the founding group. And
yay, you were.
I was, yes, and Million Mamas movement, and to really ensure that everybody feels supported, informed, and inspired, because without a vision, the people perish. And what you're hearing Diane talk about is truly about being in touch with your values and making sure that your actions and your values are in alignment. And that when you take action, absolutely to engage civil disobedience in a peaceful manner, and to learn the truth and dig deep for the truth, and to take a stand, which makes you, that word integrity, you're in alignment with your values. What's important? What will you comply with? What won't you comply with? And to know, as you said so eloquently, that freedom is an energetic, and America was born out of a desire for freedom for all peoples. Of course, we know that people of color and of the female identified persuasion were not part of that equation initially. However, I do believe that if people practice what you're talking about, and we all come together and hold this conversation and really, and be brave, right? Because part of this conversation, Diane, is about being brave, because something about human nature, some human nature, is to ask questions or to rock the boat, like you aptly said about being called crazy or all the different things. I mean, the thing that's so crazy to me is, why would somebody be labeled crazy because they want to practice homeopathy or be a naturopath or drink raw milk instead of processed chemical milk? It's, to me, it's just like this. So your invitation, I'm RSVPing to your invitation, Diane.
That's great. All right, Wendy, you're awesome. I love your summary. Boy, that was a wonderful summary of what we want. We want to do this.
Yes, we do. And we're actively engaged in it. And I'm so grateful to people like you who have not only the heart and the mind, but the soul. You understand how law works. You understand public policy. You understand lobbying. So you have this expertise that you do guide so many people, and you lead your organization. And you know, God bless you for all you've done for homeopathy and naturopaths and protecting Mother Earth and helping to guide us in California. I mean, you are such a gift and a blessing. So I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me today, Wendy. And I'm just so delighted that you're still on the Freedom Trail as a remarkable leader in California.
Thank you.
With millions of women and citizens behind you and getting the word out. Just so important right now. Thank you. I see behind you the heart space is there, and your heart is going to definitely radiate all of these messages. So thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you.
My sincerest joy and pleasure. Thank you so much. And I will be in touch.
All right.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us. I will make sure that you have a replay of this and that you know how to connect with Diane and all of the organizations mentioned and attend the next dialogue. So stay well, be free, and keep on keeping on. Have a good
Thanks,
afternoon.
Wendy.
Thank you. Bye.